as well. So I talked a little bit about moisture that's going to be filtering into our area. So let's talk a little bit more about where exactly it's coming from. Most of our weather for the past week or even longer has been driven largely by this high pressure system here and this stationary boundary that's off the coast here. Now this stationary boundary has now shifted further south of our area, so it's not quite pushing as much moisture into our area as it was earlier in the week. All that moisture earlier in the week was fueling the continuous rounds of rain that we had in our area with the wedge pattern that we had. This high pressure system was pushing the wedge our direction, and we were just locked in on the same pattern for many, many, many days. Now this has moved further south and off towards the coast. You can see the showers that it's spurring up off the coast. It has also spurred a low pressure system off the coast as well. We talked about this. This low pressure system is going to push a little more moisture into our area over the next couple of days. So that was the moisture I was talking about that may add to the rain chances through the weekend and through the early work week. Not only is it pushing moisture into our area, but it's also being monitored for potential tropical development. So let's talk a little bit more about that. You saw the low pressure there on the surface map, but here's kind of what it looks like outlined by the National Hurricane Center. It's a couple of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Not a very impressive area of that, and the chances of development, just to start off with the good news, have steadily dropped over the last couple of days. We were watching this thinking maybe it had the chance to support tropical development, but what's going to happen here is this low pressure system is just going to keep drifting towards the northeast. Eventually, it's going to run into that frontal boundary that I just showed you, and they're going to kind of absorb each other, and it won't really be able to support any further development. So as it gets closer to doing that, probably doing that sometime this weekend, the chances of development just continue to tank. So you can see now from the National Hurricane Center, we stand at 10% chance of development over the next 2 days or over the next 7 days. It essentially has to happen over the next 2 days, or this low pressure system again is going to run into that boundary and no chances of development will be supported after that. So right now it's low chances of development. It's likely not going to happen. And even if it did, it's really not something that we would have to worry about at all. It's continuing to push towards the northeast, and we've seen probably the most impacts that we're going to see from it at the moment. It's filtering more moisture into our area, and that's about all it's going to do for us. It's not the only area that we've been watching over the last couple of days. We've also, for many days now, probably since last weekend, had our eye on this tropical wave out here in the central Atlantic. So this pushed off the west coast of Africa into the central Atlantic over the last couple of days. It's just a little area here. The idea is that as it continues pushing further into the Atlantic, pushing into the western Atlantic, that's when it may encounter an environment that might be conducive for it to produce some tropical activity. So right now it's a 0% chance of development over the next 2 days. Why is that the case? Well, as it kind of pushes further here into the Atlantic, right along this region, it's running into some pretty dry Saharan air. So it won't really be able to develop any further while it's moving through this region. But as it pushes further into the Atlantic, this kind of outlined region here from the National Hurricane Center has much better chances of supporting it developing. So the National Hurricane Center has named this Invest 96L. Now we talk about this term invest from time to time. It may sound kind of complicated. Overall, what that term means is that the National Hurricane Center is pretty certain that this will be a tropical depression or a tropical storm within the next 7 days. That's all invest means. So likely we'll be watching this over the next week or so, and it's probably going to become a tropical depression within the next 7 days. Thus, the 50% chance of development over the next 7 days. There's not really a great chance of this becoming some sort of major system. No models are really indicating that at the moment, but there's a chance that it could be at least a tropical depression within the next 7 days. So not something we're talking about immediately, but we'll be watching this over the next week or so for potential development. And then beyond what it does in this region here, we'll have to keep seeing. Models have a lot of disagreement about whether this thing is going to turn towards the west, whether it's going to turn towards the east. We don't really know exactly where it's going to go. So we'll just have to keep our eye on this over the next week or so. But don't be surprised if you see this turn into a tropical depression within the coming week. In terms of where we stand with the 2025 hurricane season, we're kind of right on track, maybe slightly ahead of track, but we're having a pretty average season so far. We have had 4 named storms, all of which have been tropical storms. We've not yet seen a hurricane in this 2025 season. The next name on the list to grab would be the E name, which would be Aaron. So to kind of take a look at hurricane frequency, where we should be for this time of year versus where we typically stand, we tend to see a big uptick in activity as we head into the month of August. So now we're into the month of August. Remember, the peak of hurricane season is right around September 10th, so we'll be approaching the peak before too long. So increase in activity is definitely not uncommon for this time of year. I mentioned we have not yet seen the first hurricane of the season. On average, that typically occurs right around August 11th. So we'll keep our eye here over the next, I guess that's in a couple of days, and see kind of what happens maybe with that system out there in the central Atlantic. But that's on average when we would see the first hurricane of the season. The months between August and October, so all the way through October, is when we tend to see the most activity of the hurricane season.